Okay, we're going to start by opening the forum tool, and in order to do that we'll choose this chapter, and we'll go down to the bottom of that and we'll choose add an activity, and we'll choose forum. And a real quick look at the settings when you go to set up discussion availability and when it's closed. Those are standard in all of these, same as usual. I strongly recommend you use that. For attachments and word count, I like to have display word count on, that way they can see how much they have written. Subscription and tracking, if you say that it is a forced subscription, then they'll automatically, the entire class will be part of that discussion. And while one can use these other settings, I'm going to skip right down to ratings. Those are unique to the discussion forum. Ratings, this is important, and this is specific to discussions. Now, when you do this, bear in mind, a lot of times students will have responded to several different interactions, and maybe they've created a topic, maybe they have not, but regardless, you can go through, and you're really encouraged to go through and rate these individually. It's a bit time consuming, but goes relatively rapidly if you can go through the comments quickly. Now, there are 5 kinds of ratings, although you don't have to rate a discussion. However, if one's going to assign it, it only seems reasonable that you're going to take the time and go through that and be part of that class with them and not make it an independent student discussion, but a discussion with which you're involved. That said, average of ratings makes the most sense, as if they've made 5 comments, the average quality of that comment is what the score will be. You can also do a sum total of how many times they commented, and there's several other options here that are self-evident, but I recommend an average of ratings. We're going to say it's a point structure, and the maximum grade, this is important. If you do it something like 5 or 3, then you can look at these as a drop-down really rapidly. We'll now skip all the way down to completion tracking. The others are much the same as in any other activity you set up. Within activity completion, though, it indicates what kinds of or how many responses the student is going to make. This cannot be altered after a student has participated in it. And the best place to set this up is when you first set up the activity. So let's look at that. Upon consideration, these are self-evident, where if it is completed, if a student just views it, you just want them to pop in there. A student must receive a grade. If you've graded it, it's complete. A student must post either discussion or reply, or maybe the student must just create a discussion, or a student must post a number of replies. This is fairly self-evident, but you can set that up, and you need to set that up in advance, because once a student has started it, it can't be altered later. Before we continue, let me point out there are 2 types of forums, the one that is called forum and the one that's called open forum. Open forum was created later. It has almost all the same features, and as such, we're going to go through regular forum first and then open forum and show a couple of differences. Know that open forum is more mobile friendly, they say, and is a bit updated, but otherwise they are largely the same. You can use whichever one you choose. And there are 5 kinds of forums, okay, and we have to talk about these really quickly because the distinctions are rather important. There's simple discussion. A simple discussion is perhaps the most useful. Instead of a bunch of different topics that go all kinds of different ways, the instructor provides a topic, the discussion topic, and then students can respond to that or one another within the field. So it's pretty easy to direct them. And I will also point out that you'll see there's a rating box. This is only what the instructor will see. The instructor will see a rating box, and that will have a drop down, and the instructor can mark that, 1 to 5, they can have the ratings in 1 to 100. You'll see that in the 1 to 100 demo here, it's not very convenient. Also, we'll see what the student sees when they go. So this is the student's view of the same assignment. They'll click into an assignment, a discussion in this case, and I've titled it Simple Discussion. That is not naturally how it would display. And then we'll see the student just sees what their colleagues have written, and they have the option of hitting reply to the colleagues or to reply to the top prompt. The next type we're going to look at is each person posts one discussion. Now this is that every student gets to basically make their own topic, and then other individuals can respond to the topic. This can turn into a bit of a free-for-all, where everyone's sort of making something up and they're all just randomly replying to one another, and it is not as directed, so I would use this sparingly. A quick example of when this might come in handy: imagine you were having all the students share a recipe, and then all the other students get to look at that recipe and comment on it. So in that regard, each of them having their own discussion topic makes sense. The next type of forum is the question and answer forum. The instructor begins the forum by posting a question. The students reply back to her answer and the question. They can't see each other's responses until after they have posted themselves. This is a pretty terrific forum if you're trying to elicit a lot of responses that are honest and then have students compare their response to the responses of others. Imagine you wanted to ask the class after a demonstration which was the most important ingredient in a given recipe. You want everyone to answer honestly but not be influenced by one another. So in this case, that would make sense to use this type of a forum. The next forum format is standard forum displayed in a blog-like format. This is the same general one where you can add topics and you can add responses sort of willy-nilly, except on the first page of the forum you'll see the full text of the first post on each forum. So this last one we're going to look at is the one that is often most used, the standard forum for general use. In this one, anyone can add a topic, anyone can respond, and once again, it's more of a free-for-all. So if you look here, you can see I click that, and then I come down, and then different people have responded to this other student. But it really can tend to snowball with all the topics and all the responses, and it is perhaps the least directed of the options you have. All right, now I'm going to add a media element for our discussion, and I'll just put one in real rapidly here. I'll go to the base, add activity or resource. I'm going to make this a regular forum, and then I'm going to fill in the information here real quick. So I have that set up, but underneath this I would like it to display a YouTube video. So I come up here, I could display an image, but instead I'm going to display a video, and I'll choose that there, and I'll choose the video tab. Then I'll put this in, and I'll insert media. Single simple discussion. I'm going to say that people can respond to what the video I just put up there. Save changes and return to course. And I go to that and I see that it's right here. It says please comment on this recipe, and it has my video right there. Now I can reply to that as a student. Let's go to the same assignment, only now we're going to segue into another tool. Actually, there are two types of forums in Moodle. I've clearly gone to add activity or resource again, only now instead of going to this forum, I'm going to go to something called Open Forum. You'll see in Open Forum that the controls are almost identical. In the background, the code underlying it is a little bit more mobile friendly, so that's the primary advantage here. These are very similar to the ones we just did. I have post options. Now here I've got a couple other variations on theme. I can allow marking as substantive, in other words, flag it as a good post for others. I can allow bookmarking. I can allow private replies where I can send replies back to individual students that others won't see. And then I have anonymous posting where all the class will not see one another's name. And then I always have display word count on. The rest of these are pretty much identical to the other forum that we've already gone through. Now for initially posting this, you'll see it is going to still allow me to do the same thing I did before, where I'm going to click video, I'm going to choose the video tab, and I will insert that media. And once again, there it populates. Now, something will happen though a little differently in terms of how one can respond. They can respond also using media. I'm going to say that I would like this to be a Q&A forum where everyone can only see the answers of one another after they have actually entered their own. And then I will go and change some of these settings real quick. So all I really want is for them to post a single reply. I've set up the ratings for such a task, and now I'm going to come up here and I'm going to save and see what goes on. Now in this open forum, you'll notice that as I pull this up, I can add a new discussion, but it doesn't automatically populate any questions or anything like that from the instructor's perspective. Here's what it looks like for a student. And here we see it, and you'll notice that while I can play it, it doesn't really have a question there or anything for me to work with. Is now I have to go create a discussion below what I have just made as an instructor. It's worth taking a moment here and explaining that in the Q&A forum, as well as some others perhaps, that if you put a piece of media in there and you actually put in the discussion point that you'd like them to address, it doesn't actually populate the screen. So after you put that in there, you have to take a moment and then go back, click the enterprise, and I'll show you how in a moment, and then put in the discussion point or the topic. So now I go back to that assignment and I click it. I'm not even clicking edit. And right down here I can add a new discussion. So now as an instructor I've added a discussion and it's posted there. Let's see what the student sees. So the student can see the video, and now there's a discussion question there, and one can reply to that. So now the student can reply here and put in what they want to call that reply, and they have come up with their suggestion and they're going to submit it. and then I can reply to that individual if I wanted. Now what I'm going to do is take a moment and I'm going to show you how to do a video reply. So if you are the instructor or a student, you can go ahead and say that you would like to have a video that you're adding to your reply. And it's a little different, although not much, on both the forums and the open forum. So I'll show you both real quickly. So let's say that this is the student is logged in here and they're going to the forum, and they go to the forum and they click that they see what has been said there, and that's very interesting to them, and they're going to reply. So they hit reply, and now it actually doesn't populate showing a fashion for embedding a video. But I'll put some text in there real quick. But they also want to add a video right after that. And now we're going to go to advanced. So there's the same text we saw before. We put the cursor below it again, only now we're going to come up here and click right here where it shows the video icon that we saw earlier. So this allows the student to put in a actual URL, and the URL would display, or to put the video itself in. And I'm going to paste in a YouTube URL at this point. If you're using Foxfire, it may be a little different than if you're using Chrome. We recommend that it works consistently with Chrome. Put that in there, we hit insert media. And it's not displaying right now on this, although it looks as though it has been inserted. So what I'm going to do is, now that I believe I have that in there, I'm going to go post a forum. And then as the student has done that, sure enough, we have Anna Abel saying, I think the recipe should have garnish included as a presentation. And that has added to her response, obviously. So now let's take a real quick look at what it looks like on the simple forum, what those prompts are. Okay, so now we're back at the assignment page, and we see there's a forum, but it's an open forum. So we'll click into that, and I'll see that it says, it shows the video, and then it has a discussion below that, because as we said earlier, sometimes the prompt you put on there doesn't display. So it says suggestions, click the prompt here. So the student would click that, and click prompt here is something I added, obviously, for clarity. I come down here and I see there's not a fashion for posting a video. However, instead of it saying advanced, it says use advanced editor additional options in this forum, and I can click that. And now once again I can just select this, select the video tab, enter that, hit insert media, and while it doesn't display here, I will point out that when the student then goes to post it to forum and goes back to the forum itself, there's the video that she included. Then you can use these exact same steps. Thanks so much, and feel free to glance at this again if I lost people along the way.